Meets her childhood love again, unaware he's now a powerful Arab millionaire still in love with her. The rain poured down in sheets, drumming against the windows of Layla's small apartment. She stood in the kitchen, staring at the old, faded photograph in her hands. It was a picture of her and Zayn, her childhood love, taken years ago during a summer that felt like a lifetime. The memory of his laughter echoed in her mind, a bittersweet reminder of what once was. But tonight, something felt different. A chill ran down her spine as she recalled the last time she had seen him. What if he's changed? She whispered to herself, the thought sending a shiver through her. The doorbell rang, startling her from her reverie. Layla hesitated, her heart racing. Who could it be at this hour? She wiped her hands on a towel, trying to shake off the unease that had settled in her stomach. As she approached the door, she felt a mix of excitement and dread. When she opened it, she was met with a figure cloaked in shadows, the rain pouring down behind him. Layla. The voice was deep and familiar, sending a rush of memories flooding back. Zayn? She gasped, her heart pounding in her chest. He stepped into the light, revealing a man transformed. Gone was the boy she once knew. In his place stood a powerful Arab millionaire, his presence commanding and magnetic. It's been a long time, he said, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. But as she looked into his eyes, she saw something deeper, a longing, a connection that had never truly faded. What are you doing here? She asked, her voice trembling. I came to see you, Zayn replied, his gaze intense. There's something I need to tell you. Before she could respond, a loud crash echoed from the street outside, followed by shouts. Layla's heart raced as she turned to look. What's happening? Zayn stepped closer, his expression serious. We need to get inside. It's not safe out here. As they moved back into the apartment, Layla felt a rush of emotions. The past was colliding with the present, and she couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter would change everything. But as the door closed behind them, a chilling thought crossed her mind. What secrets had Zayn brought with him? And why had he returned after all these years? Layla had always been a dreamer, a girl with her head in the clouds. Growing up in a small town, she had spent countless afternoons with Zayn, exploring the woods behind their homes, sharing secrets and dreams of the future. He had been her first love, the boy who made her heart race with just a smile. But life had a way of pulling them apart. After high school, Zayn's family moved to the city, and Layla was left to navigate the complexities of adulthood alone. She had pursued her passion for art, pouring her heart into every canvas, but the ache of missing Zayn lingered like a shadow. Now, as she stood in her modest apartment surrounded by her paintings, she couldn't help but feel a sense of longing. The walls were adorned with vibrant colors, each piece telling a story of hope and heartache. But tonight, the colors felt muted, overshadowed by the weight of Zayn's unexpected return. Layla, Zayn's voice broke through her thoughts, pulling her back to the present. I know this is sudden, but I need you to understand something. She turned to face him, her heart racing. What is it? Zayn took a deep breath, his expression serious. I've changed. My life is complicated now. I'm not the same boy you once knew. Layla felt a pang of disappointment. Well, what do you mean? I've built a life for myself, a successful one, he said, his voice steady. But I've never stopped thinking about you. I came back because I need to know if there's still a chance for us. The words hung in the air, heavy with unspoken emotions. Layla's heart raced as she processed his confession. Could it be true? Did Zayn still have feelings for her after all these years? But just as hope began to blossom, A loud crash interrupted their moment. Layla's heart sank as she turned to the window, her mind racing with possibilities. What was that? Zane moved closer, his protective instincts kicking in. Stay here. I'll check it out. As he stepped toward the door, Layla felt a surge of fear. Wait! Don't go alone! But Zion was already gone, leaving her alone with her thoughts. The tension in the room was palpable, and Layla couldn't shake the feeling that something was about to go horribly wrong. Little did she know, the chaos outside was just the beginning of a series of events that would test their love and force them to confront the secrets of their past. Layla paced the living room, her heart racing as she waited for Zane to return. The sounds of chaos outside grew louder, punctuated by shouts and the blaring of car horns. She felt a knot tighten in her stomach, a sense of foreboding creeping in. What was happening out there? Just then, Zayn burst back through the door, his expression tense. We need to leave. Now, he said, urgency lacing his voice. Leave? Why? What's going on? Layla asked, her pulse quickening. There's been an incident. I think someone is after me, he replied, his eyes scanning the room as if searching for an escape route. After you? Why? Layla's mind raced, confusion and fear swirling together. What did you get yourself into, Zane? He hesitated, his gaze locking onto hers. It's complicated. I'll explain everything later, but right now we need to go. Trust me. Layla felt a surge of panic. She had just reunited with the boy she once loved, and now he was asking her to run away with him? Where are we supposed to go? She asked, her voice trembling. Just follow me, Zane urged, grabbing her hand and pulling her toward the back door. I have a car parked a few blocks away. We'll be safe there. As they stepped outside, the rain had turned into a torrential downpour, soaking them instantly. Layla's heart raced as they sprinted down the street, the sounds of chaos fading behind them. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being watched, that danger lurked just out of sight. Zayn, please tell me, what's going on? She shouted over the rain, struggling to keep up with his long strides. He glanced back at her, his expression serious. I'll explain everything once we're safe. Just keep moving. They rounded a corner and finally reached a sleek black car parked under a flickering streetlight. Zane quickly opened the door for her, and Layla climbed in, her heart pounding. He slid into the driver's seat, his hands gripping the wheel tightly. As he started the engine, Layla took a deep breath, trying to calm her racing heart. Zane, you can't just leave me in the dark like this. What's happening? He glanced at her, his eyes filled with a mix of determination and fear. I'm involved in something dangerous, Layla. I thought I could handle it, but it spiraled out of control. I didn't want to drag you into it. Drag me into what? She pressed, her voice rising. You can't just drop a bombshell like that and expect me to stay quiet. Zion sighed, running a hand through his hair. I'm in the middle of a business deal that went wrong. There are people who want to hurt me, and I can't let them find you. You're the only person I care about, and I won't let anything happen to you. Layla's heart softened at his words, but the fear still lingered. What kind of business deal? What have you gotten yourself into? Before Zane could respond, a loud crash echoed from behind them, followed by the sound of screeching tires. Layla's heart dropped as she turned to see a dark SUV speeding toward them, headlights blinding in the rain. Zane, they're coming, she shouted, panic rising in her chest. I know, he replied, slamming the car into gear. Hold on. As they sped away, Layla's mind raced with questions. Who were these people? What had Zayn gotten himself into? And why had he come back into her life just to put her in danger? The rain pounded against the windshield, blurring her vision. But one thing was clear. Their lives were about to change forever. The SUV roared behind them, its engine growling like a predator on the hunt. Zane's grip on the steering wheel tightened as he navigated the slick streets, his heart racing. "I need you to stay calm, Layla," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "We'll lose them in the city." "Calm?" Layla echoed, her voice rising in panic. "How can I stay calm when someone is trying to kill you? What did you do, Zane?" He shot her a quick glance, his jaw clenched. "I'll explain everything, but right now we need to focus on getting away." The SUV was gaining on them, its headlights cutting through the rain like knives. Layla's heart raced as she turned to look out the back window, her breath hitching in her throat. "They're right behind us. What if they catch us?" Zion swerved sharply to the left, narrowly avoiding a lamppost. "Just hold on," he shouted, accelerating down a narrow alleyway. The tires screeched against the wet pavement, and Layla braced herself against the seat. As they sped through the alley, Zane's mind raced. He had been so focused on his business, on building his empire, that he hadn't seen the danger lurking in the shadows. Now it was all crashing down around him, and Layla was caught in the crossfire. "Zane, please." Layla's voice broke through his thoughts. "You need to tell me what's going on. I can't just sit here in the dark." He took a deep breath, trying to keep his focus. "I got involved with the wrong people. A deal went south, and now they want revenge. I thought I could handle it, but I was wrong." "Revenge? For what?" Layla pressed, her eyes wide with fear. "I was trying to expand my business into new territories," he explained, his voice tense. "But I crossed paths with a powerful group that doesn't take kindly to competition. They don't just want to ruin me. They want to make an example out of me." Layla felt a chill run down her spine. "And you thought coming back here was a good idea. You're putting me in danger." "I didn't want to leave you behind," Zane replied, his voice filled with regret. "I thought I could protect you. I thought I could keep you safe." Just then, the SUV roared into the alley behind them, its headlights illuminating the darkness. Zane's heart raced as he pushed the accelerator to the floor, the car lurching forward. "We need to find a way to lose them." As they emerged from the alley, Zane spotted a crowded street ahead. "Hold on tight," he shouted, veering onto the main road. The rain continued to pour, making the pavement slick and treacherous. Layla's heart raced as they weaved through traffic, the SUV hot on their tail. "What if they catch us?" she asked, fear creeping into her voice. "They won't," Zane said, determination flooding his words. "I won't let that happen." But as they navigated the busy street, Layla couldn't shake the feeling of dread. The chaos outside mirrored the turmoil inside her heart. She had just reunited with Zane, only to find herself in the middle of a dangerous game. Suddenly, Zane slammed on the brakes, narrowly avoiding a collision with a taxi. "We need to get off the main road," he said, scanning the area for an escape route. "There's a parking garage up ahead. We can hide there." "Do it," Layla urged, her heart pounding in her chest. Zane turned sharply into the entrance of the parking garage, the tires screeching against the concrete. As they entered, he quickly parked the car in a dark corner, shutting off the engine. They sat in silence, the sound of the rain pounding against the roof, echoing in the confined space. Layla's heart raced as she glanced at Zane, his expression tense and focused. "What now?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. "We wait," he replied, his eyes scanning the entrance. "If they follow us, we'll have to think of a plan." As they sat in the darkness, Layla felt a mix of fear and adrenaline coursing through her veins. She had never imagined that her reunion with Zane would lead to this, a life-or-death situation that threatened to tear them apart before they even had a chance to reconnect. But deep down, she knew one thing. She couldn't let him face this alone. They were in this together, and she was determined to fight for their future. no matter the cost. As they sat in the dimly lit parking garage, the sound of the rain pounding against the roof created a rhythm that matched Layla's racing heart. Zane's eyes were fixed on the entrance, his expression a mix of determination and fear. The tension in the air was thick, and Layla could feel the weight of the moment pressing down on them. "Zane," she said, her voice barely above a whisper, "what if they find us? What if we're trapped here?" He turned to her, his gaze intense. "We won't be trapped, I promise. But I need you to trust me." "Trust you?" Layla echoed, her heart aching. "You're the one who brought this danger into my life. I thought we were just going to catch up, and now we're hiding from people who want to hurt you." Zane's jaw tightened. "I know. I never wanted this for you. But I can't change what's happened. All I can do is protect you now." Just then, the sound of tires screeching echoed from the entrance, and Layla's breath caught in her throat. "Zane, they're here!" she gasped, her heart racing as she peered through the windshield. A black SUV rolled into the garage, its headlights cutting through the darkness. Layla's stomach dropped as she recognized the vehicle. "That's them," she whispered, panic rising in her chest. Zane's expression hardened. "Stay down," he ordered, his voice low and steady. He leaned back in his seat, trying to remain hidden as the SUV came to a stop a few spaces away. The door swung open, and two men stepped out, their faces obscured by the shadows. Layla's heart raced as she watched them scan the area, their movements deliberate and menacing. "Do you think they saw us?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Zane replied, his eyes narrowed. "But we can't stay here. We need to find another way out." As they watched the men approach, Layla felt a surge of fear. What if they find us? What if they hurt you? Zane turned to her, his expression softening. "I won't let that happen, I promise. Just stay quiet and trust me." But just as they were about to make a move, one of the men pulled out a phone and began speaking into it. "We've tracked him to the parking garage. He can't hide forever," he said, his voice low and menacing. Layla's heart sank. "They're looking for you, Zane. We need to go now." Zane nodded, his expression resolute. "Okay. On my count, we'll make a run for it. We'll head for the back exit." As he prepared to move, Layla felt a sudden rush of adrenaline. She had never been in a situation like this before, and the reality of their predicament was sinking in. "What if we get caught?" she asked, her voice shaking. "We won't," Zane replied, his tone firm. "Just stick close to me." As they opened the car doors, Layla's heart raced. They stepped out into the shadows, trying to remain unseen. The rain continued to pour, masking their footsteps as they moved cautiously toward the back of the garage. But just as they reached the exit, a loud shout echoed through the garage. "There they are!" one of the men yelled, pointing in their direction. "Run!" Zane shouted, grabbing Layla's hand and pulling her forward. They sprinted toward the exit, adrenaline coursing through their veins. As they burst out into the rain-soaked street, Layla's heart raced with fear and exhilaration. They were free, but for how long? The sound of footsteps echoed behind them, and she could feel the danger closing in. "Where do we go now?" she gasped, glancing back at the garage. "Follow me," Zane shouted, leading her down a narrow alleyway. The rain poured down, soaking them to the bone. But they didn't stop. They had to keep moving. As they turned a corner, Zane suddenly stopped, pulling Layla close. "We need to hide," he said, his voice urgent. "There's a cafe up ahead. We can blend in there." They ducked into the cafe, the warm air enveloping them as they entered. Layla's heart raced as they found a secluded table in the back, trying to catch their breath. "What now?" she asked, her voice trembling. Zane looked around, his expression serious. We need to figure out our next move. I can't let them find you. But as they sat in the cafe, the warm air felt like a stark contrast to the chaos outside. Layla's heart was still racing, and she could feel the adrenaline coursing through her veins. Zane's eyes darted around the room, scanning for any signs of danger. "Zane, what if they find us here?" Layla whispered, her voice barely audible over the soft chatter of other patrons. "What if they come in?" He leaned closer, his expression serious. "We'll be fine for now, but we need to come up with a plan. I can't keep running forever." Layla nodded, her mind racing. "What about the police? Shouldn't we go to them?" Zane shook his head, his jaw tightening. "I can't involve the authorities. They're connected. And I don't want to put you in more danger. We need to handle this ourselves." "But how?" Layla pressed, her heart sinking. "What can we do against people like that?" Zane took a deep breath, his eyes locking onto hers. "I have a contact who can help us. He's been in this business for a long time and knows how to deal with threats like this, but we need to move quickly." "Where do we find him?" Layla asked, her pulse quickening. "He's at a hotel downtown. We can't stay here much longer," Zane replied, glancing at the door. "We need to leave before they realize we're gone." Just then, the cafe door swung open, and Layla's heart dropped as she spotted two familiar faces entering. The men from the parking garage were scanning the room, their expressions cold and determined. "Zane, they're here!" she gasped, panic rising in her chest. "Stay calm," he said, his voice low and steady. "We need to act like we belong here." They quickly ducked their heads, trying to blend in with the other customers. Layla's heart raced as she watched the men approach the counter, their voices low but filled with menace. "Have you seen a man and a woman come in here?" one of them asked the barista, his tone sharp. "No, I haven't," the barista replied, glancing nervously at the men. Zane leaned closer to Layla, his breath warm against her ear. "We need to get out of here. Follow my lead." As the men continued to search the cafe, Zane stood up, taking Layla's hand. "Let's go," he said, his voice firm. They moved toward the exit, trying to appear casual, but Layla's heart raced with fear. Would they be able to slip past the men unnoticed? Just as they reached the door, one of the men turned, his eyes locking onto Zane. "There they are!" he shouted, pointing directly at them. "Run!" Zane yelled, pulling Layla out into the rain-soaked street. They sprinted down the sidewalk, the sound of footsteps pounding behind them. Layla's lungs burned as they raced through the downpour, adrenaline pushing her forward. "Where do we go?" she shouted, glancing back to see the men gaining on them. "There's an alley up ahead," Zane replied, his voice filled with urgency. "We can lose them there." They turned sharply into the alley, the rain pouring down around them. Layla's heart raced as they ducked behind a dumpster, trying to catch their breath. "Do you think they saw us?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I don't know," Zane replied, his eyes scanning the alley. "But we can't stay here for long." As they crouched in the shadows, Layla felt a surge of fear. This was all happening so fast, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were in over their heads. "What if they find us?" she whispered. Zane turned to her, his expression fierce. "They won't. I promise. We just need to stay one step ahead of them." But as they waited in the darkness, Layla couldn't help but wonder how far Zane had fallen into this dangerous world. What had he gotten himself into, and how could they possibly escape it? Just then, Zane's phone buzzed in his pocket, breaking the tension. He pulled it out, glancing at the screen. "It's my contact," he said, his expression shifting to one of urgency. "I need to answer this." "Are you sure it's safe?" Layla asked, her heart racing. "I have to," Zane replied, stepping a little further away to take the call. "Stay close." As he spoke in hushed tones, Layla crouched behind the dumpster, her heart pounding as she listened to Zane's low voice on the phone. The rain continued to pour, soaking her to the bone, but the chill in the air was nothing compared to the fear coursing through her veins. She could barely make out Zayn's words, but the urgency in his tone sent a shiver down her spine. "Listen, I need your help," Zayn said, his voice tense. "They're after me, and I can't let them find Layla. We're in a bad situation." Layla strained to hear, her heart racing as she imagined the danger lurking just outside their hiding spot. She glanced back out toward the alley entrance, half expecting to see the men from the cafe closing in on them. "Meet us at the old warehouse on 5th Street, Zayn continued, his voice low but firm. "We'll be there in 10 minutes. Just make sure no one follows you." As he hung up, Zayn turned back to Layla, his expression serious. "We have to move. My contact is waiting for us at a warehouse nearby. He can help us figure this out." "Help us how?" Layla asked, her voice trembling. "What if it's a trap?" Zayn stepped closer, his eyes locking onto hers. "I trust him. He's been in this business for a long time, and he knows how to deal with threats like this. But we have to hurry." Before Layla could respond, the sound of footsteps echoed in the alley, sending a jolt of fear through her. "Zayn, they're coming," she whispered urgently. "Let's go," he said, grabbing her hand and pulling her along as they darted out of the alley and into the rain-soaked street. They sprinted down the sidewalk, the rain blurring their vision as they raced toward the warehouse. Layla's heart pounded in her chest, each step echoing the fear that gripped her. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being hunted, that danger was closing in around them. As they approached the warehouse, Zayn glanced back, his expression tense. "We need to be quick. If they see us..." Suddenly, a car screeched to a halt behind them, and Layla's heart dropped. The SUV from earlier had found them. "Zayn, they're here!" she shouted, panic rising in her chest. "Run!" he yelled, pulling her toward the entrance of the warehouse. They burst through the door, the sound of their footsteps echoing in the empty space. The warehouse was dimly lit, shadows dancing along the walls as they hurried inside. Layla's breath came in quick gasps as they searched for a place to hide. "Over there!" Zayn pointed to a stack of crates in the corner. They ducked behind them, trying to catch their breath as the sound of footsteps approached. "Do you think they saw us?" Layla whispered, her heart racing. "I don't know," Zayn replied, his voice low. "But we can't stay here for long." As they crouched in the shadows, Layla felt a surge of fear. The reality of the situation was sinking in, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were running out of time. "What if they find us?" she asked, her voice trembling. Zayn turned to her, his expression fierce. They won't. I promise. We just need to stay one step ahead of them." But just as he spoke, the door to the warehouse swung open, and the two men from the cafe stepped inside, their faces illuminated by the dim light. Layla's heart raced as she pressed herself against the crates, trying to remain unseen. "Split up," one of the men said, his voice low and menacing. "He can't have gone far." Layla's breath caught in her throat as she watched them search the warehouse, their movements deliberate and dangerous. She could feel the tension in the air, the weight of the moment pressing down on her. "Zayn, what do we do?" she whispered, fear creeping into her voice. "Just stay quiet," he replied, his eyes locked on the men. "We'll wait for the right moment." As the men moved closer, Layla felt a surge of panic. They were running out of time, and she couldn't shake the feeling that they were about to be discovered. Suddenly, Zayn's phone buzzed again, vibrating against the crates. He quickly silenced it, but the sound had drawn the attention of the men. "There's someone here!" one of them shouted, turning toward their hiding spot. "Run!" Zayn yelled, grabbing Layla's hand as they bolted from their hiding place. They sprinted through the warehouse, the sound of footsteps pounding behind them. Layla's heart raced as they dodged crates and machinery, desperately searching for an exit. "Over there!" Zion pointed to a door at the far end of the warehouse. They sprinted toward it, adrenaline fueling their escape. As they reached the door, Zane yanked it open, and they burst outside into the rain-soaked night. But as they stepped into the open, they were met with a chilling sight. The SUV was waiting for them, the men emerging from the shadows, their expressions cold and determined. "Nowhere to run, Zane," one of them shouted, a sinister grin spreading across his face. Oh, Layla's heart sank as she realized they were cornered. The danger was closing in, and there was no way out. "Zane, what do we do?" she gasped, fear flooding her voice. Zane's expression hardened, determination flooding his features. "We fight. I won't let them take you." As the men advanced, Layla felt a surge of adrenaline. This was it, the moment that would determine their fate. She had to trust Zane, to believe that they could overcome this together. But as the confrontation loomed, Layla couldn't shake the feeling that everything was about to change. The stakes had never been higher, and the outcome was uncertain. The rain poured down around them, a relentless curtain of water that blurred the world into a haze. Layla's heart raced as she stood beside Zane, their backs against the cold metal of the SUV. The two men advanced, their expressions twisted with malice, and Layla felt a surge of fear wash over her. "Zane, what are we going to do?" she whispered, her voice trembling. Zane's jaw tightened, his eyes narrowing as he assessed the situation. "We need to buy some time," he said, his voice steady despite the chaos. "If we can get to the car, we might have a chance." "Are you sure?" Layla asked, glancing back at the men who were now just a few feet away. "What if they catch us?" "We won't let that happen," Zane replied, determination flooding his words. "Just trust me." As the men closed in, Zane suddenly lunged forward, surprising them. "Get in the car!" he shouted, pushing Layla toward the passenger side. She scrambled inside, her heart pounding as Zane jumped into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life, and Layla felt a rush of hope. But just as they were about to pull away, one of the men lunged for the door, grabbing Zane's arm. "Not so fast," he snarled, trying to pull Zane out of the car. "Let go of me," Zion shouted, struggling against the man's grip. Layla's heart raced as she watched the struggle unfold, fear gripping her. "Zane," she cried, reaching for him. "We have to go." With a surge of adrenaline, Zane twisted free, shoving the man back. "Get down!" he yelled. And Layla ducked instinctively as Zane slammed the car into reverse, tires screeching against the wet pavement. They sped backward, narrowly avoiding the other man as he lunged for the car. Layla's heart raced as Zane quickly shifted into drive, slamming on the gas as they tore down the street. "Go, go, go," Layla urged, her voice filled with urgency. Zane's expression was fierce as he navigated the rain-soaked streets, weaving in and out of traffic. "I won't let them catch us," he said, determination etched on his face. Oh, as they drove, Layla's mind raced with questions. "What now? Where do we go?" "We need to get to my contact," Zane replied, his eyes focused on the road ahead. "He'll know how to handle this." But as they turned a corner, Layla spotted the dark SUV in the distance, its headlights cutting through the rain. "Zane, they're still following us," he shouted, panic rising in her chest. "I see them," he replied, his grip tightening on the steering wheel. "We need to lose them." Zane accelerated, the engine roaring as they sped down the street. Layla's heart raced as she glanced back, the SUV gaining on them. "What if they catch us?" she asked, fear creeping into her voice. "They won't," Zane said, his voice steady. "I promise." As they navigated the street, Zane took a sharp turn, heading toward a less populated area. The rain continued to pour, making the road slick and treacherous. Layla held her breath, praying they could escape. But just as they thought they had gained some distance, the SUV appeared again, barreling down the street behind them. "They're right on our tail," Layla shouted, her heart racing. "Hold on," Zane yelled, swerving to avoid a pothole. The car skidded slightly, but he regained control, determination etched on his face. "Where are we going?" Layla asked, her voice filled with urgency. "There's an old warehouse on the outskirts of town," Zane replied. "If we can get there, we can hide until my contact arrives." As they sped toward the warehouse, Layla felt a mix of fear and adrenaline. They were in a race against time, and the danger was closing in. "Zane, they're gaining on us," she shouted, glancing back at the SUV, which was now just a few car lengths behind. "I know," he replied, his voice filled with urgency. "Just hold on tight." With a surge of speed, Zane pushed the accelerator to the floor, the engine roaring as they raced down the road. Layla's heart raced as they approached the warehouse, the looming structure appearing in the distance. "Almost there," Zane shouted, determination flooding his voice. As they reached the entrance, Zane slammed on the brakes. The tires screeched as Zane brought the car to a halt just outside the old warehouse. Rain poured down around them, but the adrenaline coursing through Layla's veins kept her warm. She glanced back at the road, her heart pounding as she saw the dark SUV skidding to a stop a few yards behind them. "Get out!" Zane shouted, urgency lacing his voice. "We need to move." They scrambled out of the car, the rain soaking them instantly as they dashed toward the entrance of the warehouse. Zane pushed the heavy door open and they slipped inside, the sound of the rain muffled by the thick walls. Inside, the warehouse was dimly lit, shadows dancing along the walls as they caught their breath. Layla's heart raced as she leaned against a stack of crates, trying to process everything that had just happened. "Zane, what now?" she asked, her voice trembling. "What if they find us here?" "We'll wait for my contact," he replied, his expression serious. "He'll know what to do." As they stood in the shadows, Layla felt a mix of fear and determination. She had never imagined that her reunion with Zane would lead to this, a life-or-death situation that threatened to tear them apart before they even had a chance to reconnect. Minutes felt like hours as they waited, the sound of the rain pounding against the roof echoing in the silence. Layla's mind raced with questions. What had Zane gotten himself into? And how could they possibly escape this danger? Just then, the sound of footsteps echoed from outside, and Layla's heart dropped. "Zane, they're coming," she whispered urgently. "Stay quiet," he said, his eyes narrowing as he moved closer to her. "We need to be ready." As the footsteps grew louder, Layla felt a surge of fear. She had never been in a situation like this before, and the reality of their predicament was sinking in. Suddenly, the door swung open, and a figure stepped inside, silhouetted against the rain-soaked light. Layla's heart raced as she prepared for the worst. But as the figure stepped into the light, she recognized him. "Zane!" the man exclaimed, relief flooding his voice. "I was worried you wouldn't make it." "Rami," Zane replied, stepping forward to embrace his friend. "I didn't think you'd get here in time." "Who's this?" Rami asked, glancing at Layla, his expression shifting to one of concern. "This is Layla," Zane said, his voice serious. "She's been caught up in this mess with me. We need your help." Rami nodded, his expression turning serious. "I'll do whatever it takes to keep you both safe. But we need to move quickly. They won't stop until they find you." As Rami began to explain their options, Layla felt a surge of hope. They had a plan, and for the first time since this nightmare began, she felt a glimmer of safety. But just as they were about to leave, the sound of engines revving echoed from outside. Layla's heart sank as she realized the men from the SUV had found them. "They're here!" she shouted, panic rising in her chest. "Quick, we need to go," Zane urged, grabbing her hand as they rushed toward the back exit of the warehouse. As they sprinted through the dimly lit corridors, Layla's mind raced. They were so close to safety, but the danger was still looming. Would they make it out in time? They burst through the back door and into the rain-soaked night, the sound of footsteps echoing behind them. Zayn led the way, his grip on Layla's hand firm as they navigated through the darkness. "Where do we go?" Layla gasped, her heart pounding. "There's a car waiting for us a few blocks away," Zayn replied, determination flooding his voice. "We just have to make it there." As they ran, Layla felt a surge of adrenaline. She had never imagined that her life would take such a turn, but she was determined to fight for their future. Just as they reached the street, a figure stepped out from the shadows, blocking their path. Layla's heart raced as she recognized the man from the SUV, his expression cold and menacing. "Going somewhere?" he sneered, stepping closer. Zayn stepped in front of Layla, his expression fierce. "Get away from us!" But before they could react, the man lunged forward, and Layla felt a surge of fear. This was it, the moment that would determine their fate. In that instant, Layla realized that she couldn't let fear control her. She had to fight for what she wanted, for the love she had found again after all these years. With a surge of courage, she stepped forward, standing beside Zayn. "You won't take him from me," she shouted, her voice strong. The man paused, surprise flickering in his eyes at Layla's unexpected defiance. Zayn glanced at her, a mix of admiration and concern etched on his face. "Layla, stay back," he urged. But she stood her ground, her heart pounding with determination. "You think you can intimidate us?" Layla said, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her. "We're not afraid of you." The man's expression darkened, and he took a step closer, but Zayn moved to shield her. "You don't want to do this," Zayn warned, his voice low and fierce. "You're outnumbered, and you know it." Just then, the sound of sirens echoed in the distance, growing louder with each passing second. The man's eyes widened, and he glanced back toward the street, realizing that their time was running out. "Get out of here," he shouted, turning to flee into the shadows. "This isn't over." As he disappeared into the night, Layla felt a rush of relief wash over her. They had escaped, at least for now. Zayn turned to her, his expression a mix of pride and concern. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice softening. "I'm fine," Layla replied, her heart still racing. "But what now? Are we really safe?" Zayn took a deep breath, glancing back toward the street where the sirens were approaching. "We will be. Rami is here to help us, and we'll figure this out together." As they made their way to the waiting car, Layla felt a sense of hope blooming within her. They had faced danger together, and despite the chaos, she realized how much Zayn meant to her. The connection they had shared as children had only deepened in the face of adversity. Once inside the car, Rami started the engine, and they sped away from the warehouse, the rain still pouring down around them. Layla looked at Zayn, her heart swelling with emotion. "I can't believe we made it," she said, her voice filled with relief. Zayn turned to her, his eyes intense. "I won't let anything happen to you, Layla. You mean too much to me." As they drove through the rain-soaked streets, Layla felt a sense of clarity wash over her. She had spent so long wondering what could have been with Zayn, and now, faced with danger, she realized that their love was worth fighting for. "Zayn," she said, her voice steady, "I want to be with you. No matter what happens next, I'm in this with you." He smiled, a genuine warmth spreading across his face. "I want that too, Layla. We'll face whatever comes our way together." As they drove into the night, the rain began to lighten, and Layla felt a sense of peace settling over her. They had survived the storm, and now they had a chance to rebuild their lives together. But as they turned a corner, Layla's phone buzzed in her pocket. She pulled it out, her heart sinking as she read the message on the screen. "You can't run from your past. I will find you." The words sent a chill down her spine, and she looked at Zayn, her heart racing. "Zayn, it's not over. They're still out there." He glanced at her, determination flooding his eyes. "Then we'll face them together. I won't let them take you from me again." As they drove into the night, Layla realized that their journey was just beginning. The road ahead would be filled with challenges, but she was ready to fight for their love, no matter the cost. In the end, she understood that true strength came from facing the unknown, and with Zane by her side, she felt ready to embrace whatever lay ahead. And as the rain began to clear, a new dawn broke on the horizon, filled with hope, love, and the promise of a future they would build together.